This morning on BRN, go delete yourself from the internet. Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, John Gilmore is the head of research at DeleteMe. John, great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
My pleasure.
And I'm glad that we're talking about this because privacy is something that we talk about regularly on the network and in so many different contexts. But having an expert like you and someone who does the research is really quite powerful. Let's start off with a basic, broad question. The internet has a lot of information, John, and our private information, our name, our address, even our social security number could be on that internet.
That is true. And the general reaction I think people have had over the years to that has changed dramatically. Like I remember when I first started around 2017 working in this area, the reaction most adult people I met was, so what? What are they going to do with it? What's the big deal? My name has been in the phone book forever. And I think the worst phenomenon that people could conceive of at that time were things like spam, email, junk mail, robocalls. They were fairly innocuous. They weren't considered threats to personal privacy. They were just abuses of people's contact information. As time passed, it became clearer and clearer that there are far greater risks of personal information. I don't like to call it private information per se. Personal information being widely available opens up the door for all kinds of potential abuses. And I think the one that really kind of woke the world up was during COVID, the explosion in identity theft, particularly related to government benefits. There was just hundreds of billions of dollars was lost to fraud and unemployment, payroll protection programs, health benefits, and the scale of it was enormous. And at the same time, a lot of businesses were taking notice that the cyber threats that they were facing weren't typical network intrusions, that they were more social engineering driven. That rather than someone trying to hack into your company, they could just phone up your IT desk and say, I need to reset my password. And so people essentially using limited pieces of personal information to get to break into private networks.
Yeah.
And it was the combination of those two things happening at the same time, really, or growing at the same time, that made a lot of people realize that all of this public personal information is a source of genuine risk.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of bad actors out there, some here in the States, a lot of them abroad, as you mentioned, in some countries where we don't even have extradition rights to seek restitution or to capture these people. And one group of people I have to think, John, that's extremely vulnerable is our seniors. One, maybe they are not up to speed on some of the tactics that some of these people are using, these groups are using, but they also have a considerable amount of wealth, John. I mean, $84 trillion by all accounts. I can see why the scammers want access to these people.
Going back to the very beginning, again, when I said when the company first started, I would say the two groups that immediately saw the value in data removal or personal information protection were senior citizens. In fact, AARP was a very early partner of ours. Senior citizens and your sort of very tech proficient people who had worked in big data themselves, who spent their days mining people's information, they realized how much was out there and the potential for misuse. And so I would say our audience, our customers in the very early days there were kind of two different profiles. One was the senior citizen concerned about identity theft, and the other was your sort of IT employee who was very, very aware of the potential applications for personal information.
And John, let's just say I Google myself or I use DuckDuckGo, whatever, some search engine. I mean, I can find something on Jeffrey Snyder in a lot of places. But one, I do a lot of TV and shows like this, so my name's going to be out there. Is there a way for me to remove things that I don't want about Jeffrey Snyder? I hate talking about myself in the third person, but are there ways that I can remove that information so that it doesn't fall into the hands of bad actors? So it's not in the phone book, so to speak. Because in the phone book, we could have, maybe people don't remember this, you could have an unlisted number. They could say Jeffrey Snyder unlisted. So how can I eliminate my PII, my personal information out there on the internet, scrub it clean?
There's multiple things you can do. The first thing which I offer as a caveat, in which maybe my boss wouldn't love, is that there is no such thing as perfect privacy on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of information that gets published by open web data brokers or people search companies comes from public records. And you cannot eliminate public records. If you are on a voter roll, if you have a car registered with the DMV, if you have any legal records like a divorce or a bankruptcy, that information is on public record, and it can and will be mined. There's other sets of data that are used for financial and legal reasons, like for instance, your credit history. Experian, TransUnion, those people, if you applied for a loan, anybody you apply to a loan for has the right to check your credit history and confirm your identity is what you say you are. And you often have to share, like, what are your 3 previous addresses, so they can verify you are who you say you are. So there is a legitimate, like, economic purpose for companies having transparency into personal data. It's just that the privacy part is not eliminating it. Privacy is about controlling who has access to things. I think maybe this is a bit philosophical, but people often confuse security and privacy, and they're very different things, which is security is something you want to lock away and allow no one access to. Privacy is the process of determining who you share things with. And so making information private isn't getting rid of it. It's not eliminating it from the public sphere completely. It's making sure that it's being shared with who you want it to share for the purposes that you want to share it for. And so there is no such thing as complete hermetic privacy where you can eliminate every record of yourself. However, there are a bunch of things you can do to limit it and to limit its exposure by third parties who have no right to it. One thing you can do, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, and that was a good segue. Sorry to interrupt you. I was going to ask you. So, what can we be to be good practitioners of maintaining our data the way we want it? I mean, we can certainly seek out a firm like yours, DeleteMe, right? Because you have the capability of scrubbing and cleaning. I'm going to call it that. But how do we become good practitioners of our own and aware of our own data and how we want it managed?
There's 2 primary aspects to it. One is what I would call data hygiene, which is your own personal behavior, which is never mind what is out there and what is published. Pay attention to what you share, who you share it with, and why. I'm sure that people in our business would rather say, don't worry, you can just hire us and we will solve all your problems and you don't need to do anything. The reality is that's not true. People need to take some degree of personal responsibility for how they share information and what they make public. For example, if you put your life history on a Facebook page voluntarily, if you put
Yeah.
it there in the first place, you put all your kids' names, all your kids' birthdays, your dog, your favorite sports team, if you put all of that information in a public place, you put that there voluntarily, and we cannot undo what you have done. And you have created a relationship with that company by voluntarily sharing it. Um, People should rethink how much personal information they make public in very public places. Another example would be people who put their biographies in their social media, any other social media like Twitter or LinkedIn, people who
Yep.
publish their professional histories on LinkedIn. it used to be 10 years ago that that was considered the norm. It was totally normal for people to have links to their CV everywhere, on their public websites or in their bio. That has changed because people are growing more aware is that that's simply asking it for it to get scraped, which is how the vast majority of that sort of information falls into third-party databases. So the first thing to do would be, do you need to give this person your phone number and your email? There are a lot of cases in which people ask for it where you don't need to give it to them. I mean, if I can't go to the drugstore and buy anything at the drugstore without them asking for me to confirm my phone number. And it's often for things that I'm just like, I just had a simple question, it's that personal information is increasingly being used for all sorts of transactions that it isn't necessary for. So that's one thing, which is people should be more cautious. And one practice that we recommend, which you can use if you use DeleteMe's service, we provide tools to allow people to create masked email addresses and masked phone numbers, so that if you do have say you're buying something from a retailer or you're trying to sign up for some service and they want an email address or they want your phone number, you can give them a dummy number. And that dummy number is validated to you. It's just that it doesn't go anywhere. No one can ever phone it up and reach you. Um, so having some proxy data to sort of insulate yourself from third-party data collection is a good step. Another one is just being careful where you publish your personal information, the example I gave, like Facebook before. The second thing you can do is you do an audit of what is out there. And sometimes what is out there is benign. It might be an art, it might be you were in a alumni directory from high school or college, or you're in a professional database of dentists in Florida. That there is information out there that is necessary for you to share for business purposes, for networking, or for whatever. Do an audit of what's out there and determine I'm okay with this or I'm not okay with this. And there are free services you can use to do those audits. We provide free scans to users. A number of third parties do. Google themselves um, has the ability to provide you an audit of your own personal information. Um, However, doing that, it's funny, one of the reactions I have when I tell people you should do an audit and you should use some of these third-party tools, they go, well, doesn't that require me sharing all my personal information with
It's
I have to give my information to Google?
it's
And
a paradox, right? It's a paradox.
in fact, to use a service like ours, you have to share as much information as possible about you, your family, your past addresses. That's how we do our jobs effectively, by tracking down every linked piece of information. And people have a real problem sometimes with um, they don't want to share personal information with third parties because they don't trust that we're going to keep it secure, and we don't share it with anyone, which we don't. Um, but it is good to do an audit of some kind, even if it just means Googling your name and address, if just searching for it, find out what's out there, find out where it lives, and decide for yourself, am I okay with this or am I not okay with this?
Yeah. Well,
And
certainly. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
no, and people have different degrees of sensitivity. A lot of people think any information out there is bad. The reality is the real sources of risk are information that live on databases that are routinely used in open source intelligence. Those are the very largest people search firms like Spokeo, been verified. That's
Yep.
them. They're very large. Those sources are the ones that are scanned most often by people digging for personal information. And removing from just the top 10 has a material benefit for people.
Yeah. Well said. It sounds like it just making people aware, which we're part of what we're doing. I know you do that regularly in your sphere, but I think it starts there. That hygiene starts with being aware that whatever you put out there could be fair game and could be used against you. Do you really want to put it out there? John, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. Keep up the great research and the great work, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Thanks a lot, Jeffrey.
And don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse, for all the news in one place. Details, of course, at our website, and your subscription supports all this great BRN content. And we're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.